Amazing.
Twelve times the king, and welcome to episode 176 of the most must-see, award-winning show to ever hit the Bedford TV airwaves, or any airwaves for that matter. North, south, east, west, backwards, frontwards, diagonally, sideways, any which way you look at it, the Wrestling Connection. I am your host, as always, your connection to the wrestling world, the adorable felon himself, the perfect Ken, or I guess in this case, the perfect 12. Mr. Ken Hill at your service, delivering all the news to you in professional wrestling today. Alongside me in the studio is Mr. 8-Ball himself, the one-stop magic shop of the Wrestling Connection, Mr. Nick Giglio.
Hi, Ken.
Oh.
No, you can't. Maria, it's all right. How about now?
Ah, loud and clear.
There we go.
And,
Hi, Ken.
and subbing in for Miss Julie, the lovely and vivacious Miss Maria.
There's a hand. She says hello.
There's a hand. There she is. Give her a hand. There's a hand. Okay. The infamous Mr. Greg Dolan cannot be in today because he is actually away in Minnesota on behalf of the Bedford TV, accepting an award for Bedford TV for best TV network. Is that right? Best.
No, I'll give you. It's the
best station within our.
It's not. It's overall excellence.
Overall excellence
in our budget category. For the entire nation. So we, Bedford TV, are the best. Oh, let me put myself on screen here. Get you out of the way. All right. So Bedford TV is the best station in the country, best public access station for PEG in the entire country for our budget category, which is a great honor. It's the highest we can get as a local access in the United States. One of the highest honors. I'm trying to figure out if there's like a worldwide one, but I just am not sure that, Europe has the same, local access stuff that we do. So we'll see.
Oh, we'll see.
Back to you, Kenneth.
You never know. I mean, we won the best talk. Wrestling Connection, best talk show last year, best general talk show. Just so general, they couldn't have a category. So big, they couldn't have a category for us. Then there's you. Then there's Then there's Bedford TV. Who knows? Next year we could be going worldwide. You never know.
Yep. All right, Ken, I'm going to continue to switch, but I got to do something up front, so keep going. I can still hear you on here.
So basically, this past Sunday was Raw's Great Balls of Fire, and of course that means today is our WWE Great Balls of Fire pay-per-review. So basically, to kick things off, as you can tell, with 8 out of 9 points, yours truly won the WK King of Pay-Per-View Championship for the 12th time in its illustrious history. So thank you. And of course, what that means that since I didn't have to cash in the Big 4 pay-per-view title, that defers to the second place winner, which in this case was a tie between Mr. Greg Dolan and Miss Julie Manoogian. And since Greg came closer on the main event tiebreaker with Lesnar versus Joe, even though both were over, Greg did come closer to the actual time. And thus, now Greg is now a 4-time WK Big 4 pay-per-view champion. So Greg, to you, I say kudos. Now that's the good news. The bad news is you only got 2 pay-per-views to cash that bad boy in. So good luck. So good luck, Mr. Dolan. All right, so overall, I thought the Great Balls of Fire. I mean, despite how much how much crap we gave, we gave him a hard time for the name, for the fact that it was basically a Jerry Lee Lewis thing, and I mean you saw the whole 4 minute segment from last week. But the point is, overall, it was actually a pretty solid show put on by Raw, by WWE, and it had a great hot crowd to it throughout the night. So all in all, it was not a bad show. Now we kick things off right here. Well, we didn't kick off the show with this, but we'll kick things off here with the Raw Tag Team Championship Iron Man match. Now, this was another history-making moment for the Hardys right here. They've been the first tag team tables match, tag team ladder match, first ever TLC match, and now the first ever tag team Iron Man match. Now, things started out a little slow right here. I mean, they had a hard time setting, I think, a real good pace right here that wouldn't burn the Hardys out, because you have to realize, okay, Hardys are getting on in years, so you can't have them going out, doing 20, 30-minute matches every single night. But the point was, you had them go, basically, you stretch things out here for the first half, and really once the second half, once we got past to the 15, 20-minute mark here, that's when things started to pick up. You had some good exchanges right here, you had plenty of fun near falls, great tag team psychology by the tag champs Cesaro and Sheamus, pretty much playing the best defense, which was a strong, brutal offense. And all in all, I mean, it was great. It was great the last couple minutes where Cesaro capitalized on a blind tag to pick up the pinfall, basically ran around the ring to run out the clock, and even by the time that Jeff could track Cesaro down, hit the twist of fate. So there wasn't enough time for a pinfall, and thus Cesaro and Sheamus ended up winning 4 falls to 3. So all in all, I thought this was a great match. The right team won right here, okay? Because clearly you got the Hardy. As much as we don't like to admit it, the Hardy's nostalgia act has somewhat run thin. So now the Hardys are now in the position to help elevate other teams on the Raw roster, and we saw that much when the beraggled Hardys ended up losing to the club, to Gallows and Anderson, and then a returning revival returned. The revival returned and beat up the Hardys even further, laying out Jeff with a vicious shatter machine. So clearly, we're heading towards a feud between the revival and the Hardys, which is great. It's a chance for Hardys to move away from the tag team titles, and for the revival to get some more main roster cred by going over a far established tag team in the Hardys. So good for Cesaro and Sheamus to get the win, and good for Hardys moving on to other feuds. All right, so moving on from there, we come to the Cruiserweight Championship match. We had Akira Tozawa on behalf of Titus Worldwide challenging King of the Cruiserweights, Neville, for the Cruiserweight Championship. Now, I'll give it that this was an interesting matchup right here. It never really seemed to get off the ground, and I say this more as an observation than a complaint. There was an unusual lack of involvement from Titus right here, because we've seen Titus be far more involved, verbally and physically, in his other client's match, in Apollo Crews' match. And it begged the question, why wasn't he more involved here? Was he intimidated by Neville? Did he feel like that he was trying to be a good representative and not get involved in the match? And then you had the weird ending where Neville ended up, well, for lack of a better term, crotcheting Tozawa on the top rope, leading Tozawa to have a lower abdominal injury, I guess, leading to Neville basically just laying him out with a spin kick to the gut and pinning him for 3. So what was a very intense, fast-paced match between the two kind of had a very anticlimactic finish right here. Obviously, it was a somewhat dirty finish, which opened things up to Tozawa wanting a rematch, and it seems like he's going to get one after beating Neville in tag team action the following Monday night on Raw. So the feud will continue, and it's just interesting that we're seeing Tozawa get more cocky and insistent and become more of a celeb type and Titus feels like he's more the beraggled manager. Like he's the public agent. Like now he's in a position where like if Tozawa looks bad, he ends up looking bad. So he's got to play damage. He's basically playing damage control right here, which I think is interesting. I mean, it's interesting to see where Titus Worldwide, Titus brand character will go from here. I feel like that's an interesting transition from basically Titus basically just talking a big game, not being able to follow up, and instead now realizes that maybe he needs to start cultivating other talent and building on them to make his brand mean something in the long run. I think that's an interesting transition. Like we said, Titus makes a far more effective mouthpiece right here than he does as a full-on wrestler. So I think Titus, is starting to find his groove right here as a manager, as a representative for Tozawa and for Cruz. I think it'll be interesting to see where that goes. All right, so moving away from there, we had that was the kickoff match. That was the actual kickoff match. So we'll come to the next championship match, which was for the Intercontinental title. Dean Ambrose challenging The Miz. Now, I mean, if you've seen The Miz and Ambrose lock horns before in 2017, this match, I'll be frank, was not much different, okay? Really? He's not even here. Really? Okay. The point I'm trying to make is, I mean, if you've seen one Miz Ambrose match, you've seen them all. I mean, the only exception right here was that basically this match was used to kind of put more emphasis on the Miztourage, that being Bo Dallas and Curtis Axel, showing how effective they can be in helping keep the title on Miz. So, I mean, again, kind of like another flat finish. I mean, you had the Miztourage, all kinds of involvement, leading to Miz getting the win over Ambrose, which you would think would put a seal on this, because, I mean, Miz beat him at Extreme Rules. Now Miz beats him here. So, I mean, you have to think, well, that's it for Miz and Ambrose. Yet the night after, we saw Miz kind of like having an award ceremony for himself and the Miztourage. And then you see you have Miz pretty much bad-mouthing all the losers coming out of Great Balls of Fire, such as Tozawa and Seth Rollins. That brought Rollins out, only for Rollins to get jumped by Miz and the Miztourage. Then Dean Ambrose comes out to drive off the Miztourage and Miz with a steel chair, which makes you wonder, like, okay, are they trying to transition into Miz versus Rollins, or is Ambrose going to remain in the mix right here? But I just think they need to move on right here. I think they need to move on from Miz and Ambrose. I feel like it's tired. Okay, they do have a certain chemistry with each other, but it just, I mean, just with all like the odd build-up, with the Ball family being involved, Ambrose just being more comedic, being more comical, and not being like the serious, loose cannon Ambrose that we've known, that we loved for the first couple of years when he was in and coming right out of the Shield. I think they need to get Ambrose away from Miz, because clearly Miz is the more motivated one. I feel like that he's trying to motivate Ambrose into a better promo right here, and we really haven't seen that from Dean. And I feel like this feud is a lost cause in terms of like getting that spark that we saw in Dean from the first couple of years he was here in WWE. I think they just need to move on. I think that's the bottom line. All right, speaking of Rollins, we had the match with him. We had the match with him and Bray Wyatt. This one, I'm gonna say, I mean, it was a good match. It was a good match. I won't deny it. It was the opening match for the pay-per-view. And I'll give it to them. It was a solid opening match. The only problem was that, okay, I mean, the build-up to it, like I said, was just bad. I mean, you had Wyatt being his, like, bizarre best with his promos. I mean, saying a whole lot, but not really meaning anything. And you basically had Rollins not taking Wyatt seriously at all, basically dismissing him as a false prophet, basically saying, I don't care, let's just fight. All right, so there really wasn't a whole lot of motivation for either guy. Okay, so, I mean, basically these two like I pointed out last week, these two basically just got thrown together coming out of the 5-way match at Extreme Rules. Say, oh yeah, let's just put these two together and let's just have them fight. Because Rollins said some mean things about Wyatt. Okay, so if anything, that makes Rollins more the heel than Wyatt. So, yeah, great booking there, WWE. Great booking there, Vince. All right, so the match itself was fine. You had some good some good exchanges right here between these two. A couple of good near falls, especially with Rollins and the Falcon Arrow. Wyatt mostly playing mind games with Rollins. At one point, trying to provoke him into being more aggressive and losing track of where he was in the ring, leading to Rollins trying to assault Wyatt on the outside near the ring apron. The ref tries to separate them. Wyatt comes in with the eye gouge to Rollins, blinding him long enough for Wyatt to come in, hit Sister Abigail, and get the 3 count. So a surprising win for Wyatt. And I mean, the funny thing was, whereas we were kind of split on that match, if you go into 411 Mania, where I was part of the roundtable making those predictions, I was the only one that picked Wyatt. Everyone else thought it was just going to be a clean sweep for Rollins. Initially, I thought it was. I changed my mind on that. Because look, Rollins has nothing to gain out of this, so it's not like it's going to hurt him to lose. So, and honestly, Wyatt needs some credibility here in 2017, especially coming out of his dismal feud with Randy Orton. So he needs some sort of momentum. He needs some sort of credibility to be put back onto himself. And I think it helped not only that he got the win here at the Great Balls of Fire, but then the following night on Raw, Wyatt gets a second win over Rollins, semi-clean. Again, capitalizing on the eye injury that he caused the night before to get the win, which was good. Okay, so WWE didn't go with their typical 50-50 booking right here. They basically established that Wyatt now has 2 solid, if somewhat dirty, unclean wins over Rollins. So you know what? Good for Wyatt. Good for Bray. Gets a couple of big wins going into SummerSlam. But what remains to be seen where that actually leads for Wyatt. We'll see. All right, so moving on from there, we had the Women's Championship match. We had Sasha Banks challenging Alexa Bliss. Now, this one was another great match. I expected that Sasha was going to force Alexa to step up in terms like her overall match psychology. Just putting together a much more serviceable match than what we've seen in Alexa's feud with Bayley, which was pretty one-sided in Alexa's favor. So we saw Sasha posing a much more viable threat to Alexa, and we saw that. We saw how Sasha dominated the first part of the match. Alexa did everything she could to try and keep Sasha down, including pulling out some of her more classic maneuvers, like a sunset flip powerbomb out of the corner, which was very unique. But then we saw Sasha closing in on the victory with the bank statement. Alexa desperately making the ropes. Slapping Sasha away from the ropes and taking the intentional countout, because Alexa knew that Sasha was very close to winning the Raw Women's title for the 4th time. So Alexa took the intentional walk, which was good. Okay. And like I said, there are rare circumstances where a non-finish, like a countout or DQ, works in a pay-per-view. In this case, this is the first one-on-one match between these two for the Raw Women's title. You give Sasha the countout win. It gives Sasha a win on pay-per-view, keeps the title on Alexa, and keeps the feud going. So then the following night, we saw Bayley get a win over Alexa in tag team action, with Bayley and Sasha versus Alexa and Nia Jax. So you have to think that the way this is going down, the fact that Nia still has some beef with Alexa, the fact that Bayley now has a win over Alexa, and now that Sasha is more or less still owed a rematch, you would have to think, oh, they're building towards either a triple threat or a fatal four-way right here, which wouldn't be a bad idea. Okay, I mean, we do get tired of having like a bunch of like multi-woman matches to settle things here on both Raw and SmackDown, but in this case, it works. I mean, you got a lot of good moving parts right here with Bayley and seemingly now motivated Bayley and Sasha and Alexa. And hopefully we can see more of the dominance with Nia Jax that we saw in the Gauntlet match the previous couple from a couple weeks ago. Hopefully we could see some of that same dominance and motivation that we saw from Nia leading into SummerSlam. Hopefully. All right, so moving on from there, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, I got the Cruiserweight title, got the Tag Team titles, the Women's title, the Intercontinental title. We have Rollins versus Bray Wyatt. I believe that brings us to the Ambulance match. And this one, oh boy. Oh, Nick, I mean, you had to see this. This was brutal. I mean, brutal in a good way. Basically, you just had these two fire. You had to. I mean, the good thing is you knew that Reigns and Strowman both understood that they were going to have to ramp up the violence here a notch, because I mean, this was a no DQ, no countouts, no pinfalls, no submissions. Basically, the object of this was to beat your opponent so badly to the point that they could be tossed into an ambulance. Now, I mean, they started this match out hot. You basically had Strowman tossing Reigns from one end of the ring to the other, showing the dominance that he's been displaying throughout this entire feud. I mean, you had Reigns pretty much hanging in there, using anything and everything at his disposal to keep Strowman down. At one point, using a steel chair to go after the same elbow that Reigns had previously inflicted on Strowman, the injured left elbow, the right elbow. But then, I mean, I think this is a very underrated spot. I touched on this on my review on thewrestlingconnection.com. A very underrated moment in this match is where we saw Strowman absorb steel chair shots with his good arm, his right arm. I mean, actually, with his left arm, actually. Basically just shrugging him off like they were nothing. Point blank, swinging, like baseball bat type swinging steel chair shots. And it's just... I mean, that just showed you how much of a monster this guy is. The fact that he can shrug off those kind of chair shots from someone as tough as Roman. And it just shows you, like, I mean, and you saw the dawning look on Roman's face, like, oh my God, what am I getting myself into with this match? And then you basically had Strowman tossing Reigns up the ramp, tossing him into the ambulance. You had Reigns at one point actually managed to, like, basically barrel into Strowman and push him through the LED lighting on the stage. I mean, seemingly knocking Strowman out, only for Strowman to make it back to his feet, and Roman again wondering, what in God's name do I have to do to keep this guy down? And then Strowman tossing Reigns off of the stage near the ambulance, nearly clipping him on the door, and it seemed like Strowman was ready to put Reigns away. Reigns managed to clock him with one of the big heavy stage lights. Looks like he's ready to go for the spear on Strowman. Strowman, I mean, you have to remember how intelligent this guy is. Gets out of the way, and Reigns basically dives headlong into the open back of the ambulance. Strowman shuts the doors and gets the win. So this was the first time where, okay, it wasn't so much that like someone was beat up enough, but that they were foolish enough to charge into someone. That person gets out of the way. The other charges headlong into the ambulance, and the other just shuts the door on them and wins the match. It doesn't say they have to be knocked out to the point where they can be tossed in. Just they have to be in the ambulance, and the doors have to be shut. So I thought it was a nice little twist right there. It gives Strowman a win on pay-per-view, And then we saw the post-match beatdown, which was like, this was surreal. This is like, we're going back to like 2001, 2002 right here, like where we just saw how surreal this kind of stuff was. Just, you had Reigns come out of the ambulance, all kinds of ticked off. Dives off the ambulance, spears Strowman, then tosses him in the back of the ambulance, hijacks it, drives it down to the backstage area, the parking lot, where you see Roman kind of like he's thinking to himself, what am I doing? What do I do now? How do I stop this guy from coming after me time and time again? And what does he do? He revs up the ambulance, puts it in reverse, and backs it full on into a tractor trailer. I kid you not. He backs it into it, crushes the entire rear of the ambulance. Like the entire rear of the ambulance it's totaled. And everyone in the audience, in the live audience, is standing up in shock. What's going on here? They even had to throw out like an impromptu match with Heath Slater and Curt Hawkins because they had no idea what was going on. Like just to kind of add the emphasis of, we have no idea what's going on, so let's throw a match out there while we try to get this taken care of. And they brought in the Dallas firefighters. They brought in the Jaws of Life, the actual Jaws of Life, to pry open the door, pry open one of the jammed side doors. And Strowman stumbles out under his own power, bruised and bloodied all over, kept trying to pick himself up, falling down, picking himself up, falling down. I mean, basically, he was limping, but he was limping under his own power. I mean, we've seen moments like this. We've seen moments like this where, okay, Reigns himself was tipped over in an ambulance, which you could say this was comeuppance for Strowman. But then, I mean, then you go back further, where you've seen times where like Triple H got dropped off of got dropped off in a forklift when he was in his Chrysler by Stone Cold Steve Austin, where you saw Hollywood Hulk Hogan of the NWO ram a truck into the side of an ambulance where the Rock was laying, knocked out. I mean, and it's like weeks before you see these guys come back, and then you saw, and the last time you saw a vehicular assault like this was 2003, like with Kane, where you have to remember, 2003, Kane was at his psychotically brutal best. Like he was indomitable. He couldn't be stopped. And you had someone like Shane McMahon luring Kane into a limo, like ripping out the gear shift and just letting it run headlong into the side of a tractor trailer, which put Kane out for a couple of weeks. And yet here you have Strowman walking away from all this, bruised and bloodied and limping, but he walked away. I mean, if there was any way for Strowman to cement his monster cred, like be the new monster in WWE that he's been groomed as by Kane, by Big Show, well, especially by Big Show, given what Big Show did for Strowman. I feel like this was it. This was the key moment right there that we realized that Strowman truly has arrived as the next monster. The fact that he took all of this, the match, the beatdown, the ambulance assault by Reigns, everything. It just showed that Reigns, I think Strowman has truly arrived as the next monster in WWE. All right, so to take a bit of a breather, to cool down from this, I mean, actually, before we touch on the next match, the following night, I mean, you had Angle sitting in the ring, standing in the ring with the Universal Champion. Reigns comes out. Angle pretty much does a little more than chastise him, saying, "Oh, how you have some nerve coming out here." Reigns says, "Well, I did you all a favor. I took care of the Strowman problem. Unlike you, Angle, I feel like I'm owed a championship match." And then you have the loser from the Universal title coming out and saying, no one owes you jack, okay? You lost. And yet then we had Kurt decided to make a match between Reigns, and I'll just say it, Reigns and Samoa Joe, because Joe lost. Joe also lost, along with Reigns. You had Reigns and Joe put into a match for next week, this coming Monday, for whoever wins will face Brock Lesnar for the Universal Championship. And I'm thinking, along with everyone else, are you kidding me? Okay, you took the two big losers from Great Balls of Fire and put them into a number one contenders match to face Lesnar at SummerSlam. Okay, I mean, if you had, I can imagine where it's going to go. I imagine that Strowman will find some way to return and get involved right here. Maybe he'll be made a number one contender, or maybe a fatal four-way match will be made. Who knows? But the thing is, this is the kind of short-term booking that annoys me about WWE, that pretty much puts the emphasis on, oh, you know what, wins and losses don't matter in the slightest. All right, you have Reigns and Joe, who both came up short, and yet you're giving him a title opportunity, more or less. A chance for a title opportunity. So what did they do to deserve it? If anything, Angle should have suspended Reigns for vehicular assault, for attempted vehicular homicide, pretty much. And yet that's not going to happen. I mean, yeah, Reigns coming up with the excuse that, oh, well, you guys used to pretty much blow each other up back in the Attitude Era. Okay, last I checked, Angle wasn't involved in anyone being blown up. The worst thing that I remember Kurt Angle ever doing is pretty much dousing an entire ring full of superstars in milk. That's the worst thing Kurt Angle's ever done, Reigns. I don't think he blew anyone up. You can look to Stone Cold to see if he blew anyone up, especially, or anything up, like the DX Express, but not Kurt. All right, so but the point is, what I'm trying to touch on is it's the short-term booking. I mean, if you would come out and say, okay, maybe we'll have a match between Strowman and Reigns one more time. This time the winner faces Lesnar. If you had Strowman somehow involved in the number one contendership, I wouldn't think that's a big deal. But the thing is, you're taking two losers, booking them in a match where whoever wins faces Lesnar, and you think neither guy deserves this because they both got beat clean as a whistle. There was no dirty finish. There was no involvement, no outside interference. So what claim do these two have to wanting to challenge Lesnar again? Just my 2 cents. Just my 2 cents on that. All right. So before we touch on the Universal title match, we had this one match, Big Cass versus Enzo. I mean, we all knew how this one was going to go down. All right, let's call a spade a spade. We all knew how this one was going to go down. For as big a game as Enzo was going to talk, we knew Cass was going to barrel right through Enzo. There wasn't much doubt in that. I'm sure even Travis knew that, Enzo was in for a world of hurt. Cass pretty much dispatched Enzo in short fashion. And then the following night on Raw, we had Cass being confronted by the Big Show, which I said myself, made perfect sense. All right, Cass moves on to the Big Show, gets a much bigger, more challenging opponent to put him over, leading into going into and coming out of SummerSlam, opponent that can help elevate Cass to being another Strowman level monster on the Raw brand. Okay, so now we come to the main event. Now we come to Brock Lesnar, Samoa Joe for the Universal title. I already touched on this, the fact that Lesnar won, but we saw that this was not a cut and dry match like Lesnar's had so many times in the past. Joe came firing out of the chute right here, assaulting Lesnar even before the bell rang, laying him out with a Uranagi through one of the announcer tables, pretty much showing that he was ready and raring to go. Lesnar being seemingly foolish enough to struggle his way back in the ring and say, let's start the match. All right, Joe went for the coquina clutch many, many, many times to knock out Lesnar. Lesnar would try and take Joe to Suplex City as much as he could, hitting 6-7 solid German suplexes. Joe would not relent. He kept going for the coquina clutch. At one point, it seemed like Lesnar was about to be knocked out. but managed to slip out, hit a couple more suplexes, and then even when Joe went for the coquina clutch one more time, Lesnar managed to counter that into what seemingly was a desperation F5 to put Joe away. Now, I thought this was a good match. I thought it showed that Joe could truly consider himself on Lesnar's level. Lesnar paying for underestimating Joe the entire time, showing that Joe can compete with someone like Lesnar on an even keel. Now, I mean, Joe showed great aggression. He was hungry. He was constantly in pursuit of the Universal title, not pulling any punches by going for the knockout move, the coquina clutch several times. Clutch. So it showed that Joe was determined to win the title, and Lesnar was desperate to hold on to it, and Lesnar's desperation paid out in the end, but just barely. So I can understand where Joe gets the idea that, you know what, you escaped me. You did not beat me, which was Joe's words the following night on Raw. But the problem with that is if it had taken more than one F5 to put Joe away, I would be more apt to seeing Joe and Lesnar tie up again. But the problem is, that's it. It only took one F5 to put Joe down. Whereas you had matches with Undertaker, where it took 3 F5s from Lesnar to beat Undertaker and end his undefeated streak. I mean, you had Reigns, who more or less tanked 4 F5s from Lesnar before Rollins came out and cashed in at WrestleMania 31. So the fact that it only took 1 F5 to put Joe away, I gotta say, it doesn't really say a whole lot for Joe's tenacity. The fact that it took only 1 F5 to put him away. I feel like if there was more to be done to put Joe away, I think Joe would have a better claim to saying, you know what, okay, you didn't beat me straight up. You escaped me. You eluded me. And I'm not going to stop until I get that Universal title from you. So, I mean, like I said, that's just a little caveat. That's a little complaint of mine. Overall, I thought it was a great match. I really helped establish Joe on the main event level. I think it was great. And hopefully they can capitalize on that in the coming months and not just lose Joe entirely as a main event prospect. All right, so that is all for the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-review. I do believe that coming up either next week or the week after, we'll be having our SmackDown exclusive Battleground pay-per preview view, being headlined by, of course, Randy Orton versus the WWE Champion Jinder Mahal in the only third ever Punjabi prison match. Will be interesting to touch on once we come to that. But in the meantime, folks, for Maria, for Nick, for everyone at Bedford TV, again, I said congratulations go out to Greg and Nick and everyone else at Bedford TV for the magnanimous award. I'm hoping that the Wrestling Connection gets a repeat this coming fall for the ACM New England Northeast Awards. Here's hoping. So in the meantime, folks, just make sure to tune in next week. And for now, I am Ken Hill, reminding you as always to be connected.
Hold on, Ken. Do you have 5 minutes?
What time is it?
4:30 flat.
All
right. Well, here I'm gonna bring myself up there. Sorry, I had to do a bunch of work stuff.
All right.
And I can actually tap in here. That's how I could change pictures, which is
Cool.
very cool. Here, we'll get you in here too. So, no, this way.
All right.
So why don't you move? It's easier if you move. There we go. So we have a new thing on the Wrestling Connection.
Really?
Yes. And because we talk about wrestling, I was going to do, it's called the Random Word Generator. And you're going to take a random word and you're connected to wrestling in some way. As a form of improv, stuff like that. So we actually have a preview for it. I wonder if you've seen this movie, but here we go.
Random Word Generator. Oh, I know this. I know the song, the 1812 Overture.
Yes, but there's a movie aspect to it too.
V for Vendetta. I've seen the movie. Come on.
First, the overture. Yes, the strings. Listen carefully, can you hear it? Now the brass.
I can hear it. Look outside,
Believe the hype.
Look at that music. How did he do that?
Wait, here comes the crescendo. How beautiful, is it not?
Where it is?
Your word is flavor.
Well, flavor. Flavor, I mean, yeah, you think of a lot of wrestlers. You think how they have a long-lasting impact in professional wrestling. Like Stone Cold with his what chance, The Rock with it being the people's champion, a million catchphrases. And of course, John Cena, Randy Orton, Hulk Hogan. Guys that have a lasting impact. But then you have these guys who seemingly are just flavors of the month. Basically, guys that Vince initially gets behind, but loses interest. I mean, you get concerned for these guys. You look at someone like Dolph Ziggler, who once upon a time was one of the biggest name prospects in WWE, and how he seemingly lost his way in the last 4 years, ever since his Money in the Bank cash and his World Championship reign petered out. It seemed like that WWE lost interest in him. I mean, you have guys like The Miz. You've got who, I mean, have been mainstays, but really lost the impact that they once had. They're no longer like at the top of the list. I mean, you have young names like an Alex Riley, who is seemingly being groomed as one of the next big superstars to come in, and yet he sort of petered out, kind of disappeared away to NXT, became a commentator, tried to have a brief comeback, but ultimately got let go by WWE because he was no longer of interest to them. I mean, you had so many so many guys come in here who sometimes won't even make they'll get let go before they make their big roster debut. Yet you go far back in those times. You have guys there was the angelic Diablo Mordecai, who came in around 2004, 2005. He was supposed to feud with the Undertaker, and he was only around for a few weeks, and he got let go. Then you had Muhammad Hassan in 2005, who seemed like with his Arab American gimmick, with raging against discrimination in America, seemed like he was being groomed for a big time deal. And then you had the London subway bombings happen, and he basically got shunted off because WWE and SmackDown didn't want to deal with the backlash, with the ramifications that they were promoting a supposed Arab American on their TV program, even though he wasn't even really an Arab to begin with. So you have a lot of these different flavors of the month that just seemed like they had potential to go somewhere, but then either just basically they fell out of favor with WWE, or simply outside circumstances that basically forced them, shunting them off to the side, and they never really had a chance to recover. I mean, so like I said, you have a lot, again, flavors of the month. I mean, like I said, you have big names that stay around, that even long after they retire, you still hear about them. But then you hear these guys who had such potential, and they just sort of fade away.
All right, nice job, Ken. We'll keep that up. We'll keep it trying to go every week if we got a couple minutes at the end.
If it means I get to listen to 1812 Overture, by all means.
Yeah. To watch
Nice.
V for Vendetta. All right. We ready to wrap this baby up?
Ready to wrap it up. So, like I said, you have to double check for me, Nick. I believe either next week or the week after will be our Battleground pay-per preview.
I get to reuse my promo from last year.
Oh, goody! It'll be the last SmackDown exclusive pay-per-view before coming up on SummerSlam in August. So get ready for that. It'll be the last pay-per-view before we head to SummerSlam. So Greg, polish up that Big Four title because you got some big time thinking to do. All right, but in the meantime,
Sorry.
it's all right. In the meantime, have a good weekend. Again, like I said, for Nick, for Julie, for Maria, for Greg, for everyone at Bedford TV, thank you very much. Again, congrats on the award, and remember, as always, to be connected. Get connected. Stay connected.
Oh, close. I always miss that one.
Stay connected. Have a good weekend.
I've heard it too many times to ignore it. It's some things that I'm supposed to be.
Someday we'll find it. The wrestling connection. The lovers, the dreamers, and me. La da da dee.